Welcome to Datum Insights, reports for MUNIS made easy.
I want to thank everybody for coming this morning. My name is Brian Powell. I'm the systems administrator for our county where I work, and I helped develop the implementation program of installing MUNIS for our county about 5 years ago. And so I'm not necessarily a daily MUNIS user, but I know where all the data goes once it's keyed into MUNIS. And one thing that we realized shortly after we did our install was that it was pretty difficult to get reports out of MUNIS in an easy way, especially for our department supervisors to kind of see their budgets and what they were doing. So over the course of the last few years, we've developed a reporting platform that connects directly to MUNIS. And what it does is it will read the GL structure inside of MUNIS and display the data in these dashboards. And I'm going to show you one that we built for the school district Berea, and they were our pilot program late summer, early fall. Before I do that, I want to introduce two more people that are on the call. The first one is Andrew Dahl. He's our VP of Marketing and Business Development, and he will also be operating the chat window. So if you have questions, or he's also can send you some documentation, he'll drop that in the chat window for you. And our other one is Tyler Moss, and he is our Finance Director, and he'll talk a little bit about pricing and payments and how we can work that as well. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the menu system for the reporting platform. On the left-hand side, you will see a menu system once you log in. And we've kind of grouped these together. This is a group of financial reports, and then we have the HR and payroll reports right here. And this is a collapsible menu. So you can open and close it by clicking this double arrow system. At the top of each menu, you'll see some tabs. And so we kind of start each report like a 30,000-foot view, so you can kind of see what's going on within the organization, and then each tab will kind of drill you down further inside the data. At the top, right through here, we call these slicers, or basically filters, how you want to view the data. And I always recommend that you start from left to right and kind of drill down to what you're wanting to look at. So right now, we're going to look at Berea's budget for fiscal year 2022. And you can see we have some graphical representations here. Kind of what their current budget is, how much they've spent, how much is remaining, and percent remaining. And then we break it down a little bit further in these little gas gauges of how much salary is left in general, how much in capital budget is left, along with the benefits. Down here at the bottom is just kind of a year-over-year expenditure graph. You can see what they've spent, like, for example, for the month of August this year versus what they spent last fiscal year. So you can kind of see, well, okay, what did I spend this year versus last year during this month? And then these two graphs on this side represent your object codes, what object codes are currently under budget and what object codes are currently over budget. Kind of a snapshot of where you're at so you can see what you might need to adjust going forward. In this tab is just a budget versus actual, so we kind of get a little bit more granular looking at the funds. So here are all the funds that Berea has. This is what they've currently budgeted in them. This is what they've currently spent. This is how much of the budget is remaining and the percent remaining. And this is what they did in the previous year. Each one of these you can open up and start looking at, I don't know if you call them like functions, others call them resources. So it kind of depends on what your school district calls your GL segments. But we start at the fund, we can open up the next GL. And then you can go down and look at another segment of it, of the GL, and start looking at the pays and see what was spent and what was budgeted. I'm going to roll this back up. And so let's take a look at this school activity fund account. If I open that one up and I look at some fund transfers, you can see the fund out. Most of these on the current expense, if you right click on those, you can drill through and you can look at some of the transactions that made up that amount. So if you see something in the expense column and you're like, well, what did I spend that money on? That doesn't make any sense. You can always right click, drill through, and it'll tie in that invoice table to show you the amount that you actually spent in that spent column. And then I'll just roll that back up. If you want to look at just a particular category, if I wanted to look at just the salary and the benefits together in those funds, I can click those two categories in the budget type. And now I'm looking at the salary and benefits that were spent versus what was budgeted. So that's what you can find in this budget versus actual detail, is getting a little closer to what you want to see in terms of granular data. You can search by funds, you can search by the function, you can search by the program, you can search by the school. So you can filter on anything that you want to look at in particular, and then you can just always clear your data as well and look at everything again as a whole. This is a budget expense detail. It'll kind of show you where you stood in the last few years in your budget, how much you're doing in your current, and how much is remaining in kind of a graph representation on the side. You can slice this data and look at any period in particular to see how you kind of stack up in the last few years. This is one that we spent quite a bit of time developing with Berea and the state of Kentucky on their, I'm sure you're all familiar with the annual financial report card that needs to be done each year. We programmed this one for fiscal year 2020 for Berea. So these are the 7 reports that you develop each year. And on this side will be your input data. So you can go in here, you put in your pupil count for each of your institutions, and it will actually build that financial report card for you for each 7 reports. So here's the first one, which is your personnel federal. It'll show your expenditures and how much of that was per pupil, and then it itemizes that out by school for you. And as I flip through these, you can kind of see how it'll rebuild this report now for the non-personal federal. And you can see also for the state, local, and the non-personnel state and local. The nice thing about these reports is if you look at this visual here at the bottom, anytime you hover over it, you can see there's 3 ellipses here on the side. If you click that, you can export this data into a spreadsheet. So what you see here can be dumped into a spreadsheet as well. So it'll automatically build these 7 reports, and you can export each one of these into a spreadsheet if you want to like consolidate them or do some additional calculations. But that's the nice thing about this budget. On top of seeing your budget is we have this annual financial report card tab that you need to create every year. It'll even go through that object code review for you. If you click that, it'll show you that if you've got some corrections you need to make in MUNIS before you can proceed with calculating everything here. But it runs automatically. It's looking at all your object codes, it's grouping them just as the instructions that you have to do that financial report card. Huge time saver right here. So let's go back over here onto the menu system again. I'm going to look at the cash balance. So we have a report here that will look at all your funds, kind of give you your cash balance. What it's doing is it's looking at, flip to 2022. So it's looking at your beginning balance. It's taking into account all your revenues, your expenses, and gives you an ending balance. And you can select what fund you want to look at real quick. So if we look at the general fund, you can see how you're doing in the general fund. It's got a detail portion, so you can go through here and look at the detail portion. If you do have some things that are ready to still be audited, it'll put it in the period 13 for you. We have a fund expense. So this is just looking at the control account. So if I look at 2022 and I want to look at the general fund, it's going to break out the amounts that I spent in each of those months out of the general fund or any fund in particular that you're looking at. So you can see kind of your group expense. It's just looking at the control account. And same on the revenue tab. So you can go in here, select your revenue, look at the general fund, and you can see what came in revenues on the revenue control account as well. So that's in the cash balance report. In the vendor report here, this is where we tie in the purchase orders and invoice tables together. Kind of shows you a little bit of a graphical representation. Again, that 30,000 foot view of what's going on inside the organization up to 2022. And you can see the current year purchases and last year purchases and the change amount in each one of those by site. If I go into the detail, this is where I'm looking at my purchase orders and the invoices that are combined. And I can search by purchase order up here, or I can search by the invoice here. These are all linked. So for example, if I'm looking at this purchase order, HVAC filters, if I click that, it'll link down any invoices that are tied to that. And you can see that the PO's been issued, but nothing's been liquidated or credited or canceled on it. Let's look at one here that has been done. And you can see that there's 2 invoices linked to that. You've got the invoice numbers, the invoice date, and the check number that those were issued on. So putting the POs together with the invoice just to kind of help find things a lot quicker inside of MUNIS. Then we'll get into a little bit on the HR reports and payroll. So this is one program, and then this is another. This is an add-on that we have, and we can share that flyer with you. But in the HR reports, this is combining a lot of the information that you have in your employee master, position control, and job salary tables. We're kind of grouping everything together to get some views in here. So this is an overview, breaking down your ethnicity, gender, tenure, employees per institution level. If I go into the position control module, I'm now getting headcount amounts, FT amounts. I can toggle between active and inactive employees. I can look at vacancies. I can look at it by my units. I can look at it by group BU or position IDs. This kind of gives you the name, pay codes, grade steps, salary, allocated amount of salary. And again, like most of the bottom visuals, you can click that ellipsis and export the data into Excel to do some additional calculations or filtering or cleaning up or whatever you want to do on that. This tab here kind of will give you an employee cost breakdown. So now I'm looking at the employee ID and the name, and I'm looking at what the statutory benefits are required and the amounts, the retirement and health insurance, looking at the allocated annual salary for a total compensation and how many years that the individual has been on site. This one's been a pretty popular one. I don't know if Kentucky does any negotiation with teacher unions, but for the school districts that we worked with in California, they need this report. It's called the cost of 1%. It basically just says, okay, well, if we increase our salary and benefits by 1%, what does that look like over all the funds? So for Berea, if they increased everything by 1%, this is how much salary would be increased this next year, and this is how much in benefits. And you can break that out by fund. And if I open the fund, I can now see it by the school. If I open it up here in the high school, I'm now looking at it by position in the high school. Again, you can see the salary, the benefits, the total amount. This is what it'd be forecasted. And if I open up the athletic director, I can see the name. And if I open up the name, I can start seeing the amounts. And if I open up the amounts, I'm now looking at it by the pay and deduction codes. So this is a really powerful report. You can really drill in and see everything right down to the bottom line. This one at the top will give you your tenure report to give you an idea of how much you're paying in salary for each years of service. This gives you kind of an idea of your new hires on this side. This is your recent terminations on this side. And this is just kind of grouping all your employees by tenure, your FTE, your head count, annual salary plus the benefits, and this is your average cost per FTE. Again, you've got your slicers on the top that you can view it by group BU or position or class or unit. You could even search by employee if you're looking for a particular employee. This is a salary distribution model for the HR report. We're just grouping everything by your descriptions, kind of your steps and grades right here, who all you have in step and grade. This is your positions and how much is being paid in total compensation per position. So you can, again, export these out and you can sort them on however you want to look at them. We have a payroll report here. This will look at, it depends on your fiscal year. So you can look at this view on a calendar year or fiscal year. So we have a toggle here. Government reporting is on a calendar year for your 941s. If you want to look at it budget-wise, you'll just click your fiscal year and say we want to look at fiscal year 2022 right now. And instantly we can see what the total payroll is for this fiscal year, how much was in gross wages and regular wages, how much of that was in overtime, and how much of that was in the employer contribution. And then we break it down by pay code, so you can see the amount, dollar amount per pay code that you paid out during this time frame. And you can also see the employer contributions as well in these deduction codes. This is an interactive link as well. So if we wanted to look at just what happened in the month of September, you can see that that's a little bit higher in pay. If I just click that graph, then instantly everything changes in the data tables here, so I can see what happened in September. And if I click it, everything comes back into view again. You can slice the data up here or filter it based on your pay codes. You can look at it by your institution level. You can look at it by your group BUs. We can look at it by month or quarter, however you want to see that data. I have the details portion here. So now I'm kind of looking at it by employees, so you can see it by employee level. And this is the employee gross plus fringe. So if you're looking at, okay, well, what does it cost each individual per time period or a period in time? You can choose that time up here, and you can see that we can break out the pays and the deductions by employee and what they earned during that time period. So right now we're looking at, let's go fiscal year 2022. And now I'm looking at everybody and what they were paid during that time frame based on their codes here. So that is a little bit of what this reporting system does. These are kind of the ones that we built with Berea and views that they wanted to see. I'm assuming that most of that is pretty similar to other school districts in Kentucky, in particular, the annual financial report card. So how this kind of works again is we work with you to create an account inside your MUNIS, like you would be setting up another user, and you give that account in the user attributes access to the full GL range. So it looks at all the GLs, all your orgs and your objects, and that filters into this reporting system that's built on the or programmed in Power BI. And it will display that information here for you based on the menu system that we have built into it. So that's kind of what we have. The next steps is if this is something that your institution or your finance district would be interested in doing, we have just a little small survey that you fill out, and we will get with you after this and kind of talk a little bit more in detail. We can answer more of your questions in detail and walk you through how that all works. We also have a flyer on how that gets set up if you'd like to see that as well. So I think Andrew's going to put some of that in the chat. I think we have a few minutes here if anybody had any questions or concerns. I know we kind of went through that a little bit quick, but we understand people's time is pretty valuable and everybody's a little bit busy.
Hey everyone, this is Tyler. I just wanted to hop on real quick and thank you again for jumping on this webinar with us really quick. Just want to reiterate, as you can see, you can extract a ton of info from your MUNIS system, and this links directly to your MUNIS system. So there's no need to upload different tables, etc. It's all accessed right there to your data, and it's all within a couple of clicks on accessing that data. And also there's role level security. So if you have different people within your organization it's based on whatever they're set up within the MUNIS system already, so they can see what you want them to see and what you don't want them to see, type of thing. And as far as payment, so we want to try and be as flexible as possible. So we've set this up to bill annually or monthly, so we can invoice that way, and we can accept check or credit card. And if you set up like a credit card, we can also implement like a monthly auto pay type of feature.
So if you look in your chat window, Andrew's kind of dropping some forms in there. One is just thanks for attending survey form where you can put in your information, and we'll just circle back with you a little bit later to talk to you about this platform, how it would work for your school district, any questions that you have, and kind of the next steps going forward. And then Andrew, did you put in you put in information? Oh, okay.
Hey, Brian, will you talk? This is Andrew, everybody. Thanks for hopping on today. We appreciate it. Brian, will you talk about the data and how often it's refreshed?
Yeah, so we have an automatic refresh that we build into the data set for you. And so the data that you'll see is updated daily, once a day, usually between the hours of 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. We just kind of set a schedule for that. So anytime you're looking at the data in these reports, it's refreshed every day. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at going forward.
All right, Brian, we do have a question about how the pricing is broken down by district. If you want to open up our pricing, maybe we can share that on the screen and kind of go over that with everybody. And the other question that goes along with that is, can you set it up so people can only see certain reports? And yes, you can restrict what reports people can see.
Okay, so this is the pricing for Scott. I think he asked a question on that. So you can see down here at the bottom, we base the pricing on the employee count per district. Obviously, the more employees there are, there's the amount of data, there's more data in that district. So the pricing down here, if you have 0 to 499 head count in your school district, it's $299 a month for the financial basic package that you see here. And that package is the one that had that financial grouping in there. If you want to do the HR and the payroll report, it's an additional $200 a month. So it'd be the $299 plus the $200. And normally we have an onboarding fee, but we've worked with the association there in Kentucky we're going to waive that fee up until May 31st. If your school district has 999 employees, it's $399 a month. And if you have 1,000 to 1,900, it's $499 a month. I think when we looked at the initial populations of head counts for each of the school districts, about 80% of them fell within the 0 to 499. So that's how the pricing works for this reporting platform. And then what was the other question, Andrew?
It was if you can set up users to only see certain reports.
Yeah, that's in that role level security that we talked about. So this reporting platform will look at the user attribute table that you have in MUNIS, and it will identify those users that have restrictions on what they can see. So whatever you've set up your employees to look at in MUNIS, they will have that same kind of access in these reports. We can also add additional row-level security. So if you have certain employees that you want them to only have access to the financial information, but you don't want to have access to the HR and payroll information, we can turn that piece off for that individual user as well. Inside these reports, it's a read-only. You can't change any data in MUNIS through these reports. You can't break the reports. It's pretty robust, and what is in there is only read view. Scott, it's full-time employees. Full-time employees is what that head count is based off of on the pricing. Does not include substitutes. Well, we want to thank everybody for attending, and feel free to shoot us an email or a question or anything like that. Or if there's something inside this report that maybe needs to be modified for your school district, we can do that as well. So if there's a certain view that you're looking at going, well, it'd be nice if I could see it this way, it's not too hard for us to make those adjustments. Once we have all the tables tied together, how things are displayed in the view are pretty easy to change and move around. So we want to wish everybody a good day. Have a great weekend. Look forward to talking to you a little bit later.